All right, everybody, welcome to the BizDad recap episode. This week, we're going to be talking all about fatherhood, as being a father, being a dad is like the number one thing for me in the world. I love being a dad. I love talking about it. So please just listen to this recap episode from all these amazing fathers that we've had on the podcast this year. I really hope that you enjoy and get some nuggets out of this. If you hear something that strikes your fancy, that you're just saying, hey, I really want to learn more about this person, jump back to the full episode, listen to the whole thing. We have some amazingly insightful dads who have some great advice for you to be able to pull from and learn from. So please jump back, listen to the full episode, take notes, and please reach out if you have any questions for me or anything. So please enjoy this episode on fatherhood, and we'll have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you guys all in the new year.
Today, I am super excited to talk to Russ Kimura to chat about being a dad, a business owner. He's got a fun journey to chat about. What has been your biggest struggle thus far about being a dad, period?
There's so many things I love about being a girl dad. I knew I wanted to be a dad early on. I just knew I enjoyed kids. I enjoyed playing with kids. I would work at preschools. I would come back and work in summer fun and work with kids the summer. And so I just knew deep down that God would allow me to have kids. I was just like, man, I can't wait to have my own kids, because I loved these other kids so much, and they weren't even my own. They were other people's kids. And as God allowed us to have kids, it was so cool. And I never really thought about, so our first daughter, let's see, we did find out that it was a girl. Second one, we decided to wait till the actual, there was no reveal. We just waited, and then she came and joined us. Oh, girl number 2. And then the third one, you're like, okay, let's go find out. The doctor said something about marching band of all the same or something. I was like, oh, 3 girls. And I'm looking back, I know God called me to that and gave it to me. And I'm super, super stoked on it. Not that I wouldn't have wanted a boy, because sports, being able to raise a man and doing all that stuff is such a great calling and excitement as well. But God just decided, hey, I'm going to give you 3 girls. And that's been incredible. And it's been, my favorite thing about it would be the dynamic of and challenge of raising daughters who I might not fully understand, because I've never been there, and taking that on to be able to be intentional, to ask questions, to listen, and then also to be able to recognize where my blind spots are, because I think as a man, I don't maybe understand certain things, whether it be emotions, hormones, time of the month, but there's a lot going on, and being cognizant of that. I guess it's a challenge and a blessing within all of it.
For sure.
To be able to navigate that. But thankfully, by God's grace, we have really good relationships. Early on, I would communicate with them and make sure that they knew Dad was here for them. I'm their biggest cheerleader. I want to hear your heart. And anytime that I would catch it or recognize that I didn't hold their heart very well, I reacted or I yelled or I was harsh. Sometimes where I feel like you got to remember they're girls, because sometimes I treat them as probably adult males. Hey, this is how we do. And remembering, hey, they're still 15, 13, and 12.
Yeah.
Remembering, 1, they're still teenagers. 2, they're girls. Because I, again, probably treat them as some of my other friends who are older, more mature, and maybe thicker skin to some degree.
Yep.
Remembering that has been a challenge, but it's also, to me, one of my favorite things is learning that and helping them navigate life as a teenage girl and showing them I'm not going anywhere and I'm here for you. Let's just continue to stay close. And I really focus on connection, so that the way I view it is, if I have the connection, then there is a runway in the future for whatever life, because I know life's going to come with its challenges. But if we've already laid that and continue to lay the foundation of connection, then my prayer is that when they face their first heartache or they face their temptation or failure, that instead of feeling shame because they feel like that's gonna judge them, they know that there's connection there, and I can come to him, and because I know that he won't judge me, and I know he's for me, rather than he's only for my behavior and he's only for me if I get good grades or if I obey and I'm a good person, doing all the right things. The last thing I want is for them to feel like when I do something wrong, I need to hide it, or I need to deal with this on my own. I'm like, no, I'd rather you come to me and let's deal with it together. So then, but that comes through connection, right? Because if there's no connection and I'm like, hey, why don't you come to me when you have all these, they're like, I don't feel really connected to you. Why would I even want to come to you? And so I'm intentional about daddy-daughter dates and one-on-one times. And we have journals that go back and forth where I'll ask them questions. I've been doing that for years, even back when they couldn't even write. I would have a journal and we draw pictures, and then they would draw pictures back, and then they start to write a little bit and start work on the handwriting, and we're talking, hey, what's your favorite color, or what is this, or I would write jokes or back and forth. So the foundation of communication and relationship was being built. So now today we're in the midst of a full-blown project as a unit, but we're planning a father-daughter prom, and they're not just attending it, but they're actually helping me put it on, which is really cool, right? We're creating a platform for other fathers and daughters to build connection.
Love that.
And enhance it or start in building. So it's a cool thing of recognizing connection is key, and being able to foster that. And then also recognize the things that we do or I do that break connection. And we're not going to be perfect with it. But if I constantly am disregarding what they're saying, for instance, and I'll send it to you, but one of the things my daughter said is, was the thing you wish your dad would do more of? And then my 13-year-old was like, listen, but I listen, but I fix. And to her, that's listening. So if I constantly like do that, then the connection starts to break, because why share with that if she's just going to fix it? He doesn't even listen. He just wants to fix it or give me his opinion or share the thing he learned on the book or podcast of how to fix this. I don't want that. I just want him to listen. So I'm mindful of the fact that if we're not careful to intentionally look at connection and what's breaking and what's not, then before we know it, we're not connected anymore. And all of a sudden they're going through their teenage years or their early 20s or even their middle age 10 by themselves or without their father connection and influence, which I think is critically important. But it takes work and it takes intentionality. And I'm really intent on helping fathers do that. I have a Fathers with Daughters Friday where I do a Zoom meetup, and I invited like 20 dads who have daughters and say, hey, if you want to pop on, we're just discussing the challenges and the joys and the things that we find as fathers and daughters and just want to be better fathers and daughters. And then some guys couldn't make that early. It's a 6:30 Hawaii time AM. And so I started a Fathers with Daughters Monday night at 7 o'clock PM. So like guys after work can come on in, and just the idea of how do we help equip fathers to be better to their daughters? It takes intentionality. It takes discussion. It takes putting it in the front of your mind. And what better way than to be like, hey, I hear you. My daughter just started her period and okay, cool. What are you facing? What are you doing? How are you challenged to face that? And
I love that a lot. Yeah. And I really loved how you even mentioned the things that you want to focus on connecting with them, but also be aware of the things that break that connection. All too often, we're focused very much on, okay, how do I put this into our relationship, instead of how do I make sure that I don't take it away from our relationship? Because that's an easy thing to do. Just there's that one saying, it takes like 7 compliments to erase one negative comment or something along those lines. And if it can quickly break that trust with our kids if we do just one thing, and then it takes a lot to build that back up again. And one thing I've always said about my sons is my goal is for them to be better men than me. And what does that look like? And try to play out what that actually looks like. And obviously, having a daughter, your goal is not for them to become better men than you, because that's not possible. But my goal, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, my goal is to represent what it means to be, for her to find a better man than me, right? So if I can represent what it is to be a wonderful husband and a good, strong father, then that should be, I'm hopefully representing to her what that means for her finding a spouse that is going to be a wonderful husband and an amazing father. And I'd love to toss that over to you and have you pick that apart, or what your thoughts are on that.
Definitely. I have thought through that a little bit, because I do know the importance and the influence we have on their future decisions, potentially in terms of who they pick or how they pick for their future husbands. I love the idea of them picking someone better than, not better, but I get what you're saying in terms of, I would love them to pick someone that is better than me in terms of their intentionality, their communication, their love, their compassion, their heart to serve and give and be whatever they can be. I haven't really thought, I guess part of it is modeling. I'm just going to be who I'm going to be. But I do recognize that we are setting the standard in terms of even how we communicate and how we interact in terms of failure, in terms of disappointment, in terms of how to work through things, even how we interact with our spouses. I'm definitely not perfect, and I have had so many fails in front of them, and I've had to humbly say, hey, girls, you know what? I failed there. That I totally could have been so much better there. And I need you to forgive me because that's not okay. The way I raised my voice, the way that I treated your mom, or the way I was disrespectful, or the way that I blew that. And I think just being able to recognize that what is modeled, sometimes it's more caught than taught. You can tell them, you need to find this kind of man, or you need to do this, or you need to treat people, whatever. But then if they see me treating other people a certain way, it's primarily their mom or them, they're going to catch it. And so I do focus on, as much as possible, being as aligned as possible to who I believe Jesus has called me to be. And if I do that and help them recognize, like, they're definitely men. The hard part is in their season, they don't see it because they're 15, 13, and 12. And so that are all boys. I'm like, okay, you're dealing with 13, 14-year-old boys. Yeah. And so they're growing through their own season too. And they're figuring out their hormones and puberty and the world. And she's like, why are they so always trying to show off, or they're being stupid, or they're hitting each other? Or I'm like,
so there's this thing called testosterone.
You might not fully understand it, but this is how it is. But helping them have hope that there are men out there eventually that will love and treat you. But right now
you're watching boys.
They're going through these seasons, and these boys are figuring out how to show off for you because you're very attractive, or they're trying to figure out, how do I interact with whatever? Yeah. I think it's just modeling that. And maybe that is a good sign, is that they're like, why are all boys like this? How come they're being so stupid? They're 14. Like, give them a little
Because all 14-year-old boys are stupid.
Right?
I don't know very many intelligent and mature 14-year-old boys. That's the downfall about being a boy, is you're not intelligent or mature potentially ever, but at least until you're 25. Right. I pulled something up from your Facebook that I really loved, and I wanted to read it real quick and just to chat about it. It says, it's easy to post one-time moments with our kids. It's so much harder to be consistent and engaged day in and day out. Being a father is one of my greatest joys and challenges. Want to encourage my fellow dads out there not to be, but to try. Engage when we are tired. Be tender and humble when we feel threatened or irritated with our kids. Our Heavenly Father loves us, so we just have to try. We can do this. I absolutely loved that sentiment that you have there. And I think that even in what you're talking about right now, you're representing that very well, in saying, even when we screw up, apologizing to our kids and saying, hey, I screwed this up, I think is an absolute requirement. But it's this beautiful picture of you, and I'm guessing your youngest daughter. This was in 2020, so I could be wrong, but it looks like it's your youngest daughter, if I were to guess, at like this ballet thing. And it just, like, that sort of image of a dad embracing their daughter, like saying, hey, we're not going to be perfect. When did you really start to think that way? Or how did you get that mindset? Because a lot of men, especially men who are business owners or operators or entrepreneurs, are so driven that they're not afraid to admit faults, but they're also not always ready to jump on it. They're just ready to drive and, okay, let's just get better at this. From your experience of talking to other dads and whatnot, what's been the hardest part for you working at home while they're there and all that type of stuff?
Me learning to be mindful, because sometimes, like, I'll get out of a meeting and I'm all excited, and I'm always like, shh, you're doing school. Like, I'm in my own
Bring out
world.
your inner samurai.
Yeah. Like, you don't just walk into a classroom and share something that happened in business or your podcast or something. And so we've had to learn, especially in COVID, but all around, I think, just learning to adjust to the fact that like being respectful of it. Cause sometimes I'm just like, like homeschool, we're at home and we're doing all this stuff. And I want to give honor to the structure of it, and not just, but you're here, I can talk to you, whatever, or make faces, or don't bother them during school. I'm like, oh, got it. I don't want to be like the kid that's like distracting the students.
You're the class clown of the family.
It's okay. Or I've had many a times, and even now probably, they're saying, you're talking too loud in the office there, and I can hear you. I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to have them focus on math. That's a challenge, is like recognizing space or recognizing, but really there's not a ton of downsides. Just flexibility. Like yesterday was an amazing day. And so like they took a few, half an hour just to go hang out on the beach or go paddleboard because you can. And it's not like they're being irresponsible with their school duties. It's just, if it's this beautiful, it's almost irresponsible not to go and take advantage of that. So there's really few downsides to the homeschooling. So we'll just see how it plays out in the future. I know it's been the right decision. I'm really grateful for my wife helping with that and doing that.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. As we're getting close to wrapping up here, I want to pass it over to you to see if there's anything that you wanted to cover that we haven't quite covered yet. We barely got it. We just barely touched on the business stuff. We focused all on dad stuff today, which is one of my passions, obviously. But I want to pass it over to you to see if there's anything you wanted to touch on that we haven't quite got to yet.
No, I love this. The ability just to talk about being a dad, right? And being intentional. I think those words came up, being intentional, being vulnerable, focusing on connection, being present over perfection, like all of these things. I think the more we talk about it and the more we normalize it in the discussion of dads, I think does well to because I've learned, right? I've consumed a lot of content and books and podcasts and different things to continue to sharpen myself. And that's why I'm doing these father-daughter Fridays or father-daughter Mondays is I want to be sharpened as I sharpen other dads to be better because I'm putting on this prom, right? And I'm not taking any money from it. So one would say that's not a business venture. But as I'm doing it, I'm learning so many things about how God's created me, what he's created me to do, and what platform he might have me, I guess, execute from this is helping dads. And then business is not so much about money. It's about adding value to the world. And so as I'm thinking about business, how do I create enough value that it warrants quote money or revenue?
Yeah.
I think more and more it's going to be within the lines of that, where it's targeting the market of dads and helping dads, maybe the niche of fathers and daughters, but ultimately bringing, equipping, encouraging, connecting within those things to help dads be better connectors with their daughters, as well as just present. And to me, I don't know, I can sell that all day in the sense of it's not selling. It's really just giving people a solution for a problem. Yeah. It's not so much a problem, but I think it is a problem in the sense of, man, I don't know how to connect with my daughter. Hey, here's a way that we can not solve it, but get better at it. And if I can help you do that, and we could create a community, or we create a course, or we create a coaching thing, or we create events, you know what? I think God could do a lot of things within that. And as we add value to the world, then it produces revenue.
We have sports coaches, we have business coaches, we have life coaches. Why not have coaches to be a better dad? Why not be involved in stuff to be a better dad and be more involved? And your kids, the legacy that you leave with your kids growing beyond you is way bigger than any business that you're going to build. You might as well, you need to put in the effort on that just as much as you do in your business or in any other venture in life. So I love that.
I used to tell my son, I make both my kids do this. I said, when you get into your first day of class, I want you to ask your teacher, how can I be rich?
Yeah, they're not going to know.
No. And so I'm like, listen, I want you to ask your teacher. So I remember my son comes up, he asked his teacher, he was like, hey, this was in first grade, how can I become rich? And she was just like, keep coming to school, which, okay, I get it. Partially true, right? You want to keep learning, right? But most of them have no clue.
Yeah.
So these are the mentors that are mentoring our children. And listen, money and finance is one aspect of success in life. There's so many different aspects. But at the end of the day, we're raising our kids to be self-sufficient and independent. All right. So we need to put those type of things in there. So grit, never giving up, never stop learning. You want them to be financially independent, especially my daughter. I'm really big about financial independence for my daughter. I said, I don't want you to ever feel like you have to depend on someone. I want you to be self-sufficient. And that, not just finance, even in self-defense, I teach them jujitsu. I opened up a school right next to my house specifically so I could raise my kids on the mat.
That's awesome. I've been super impressed with kind of the method that you've used to raise your kids and all the things that you're doing and the pure dedication that you put into it to make sure that it's all getting done. And you sent me your schedule for the homeschool a couple days ago. And I was like, son of a gun, do I feel because I did what I did on purpose with the homeschool stuff, is doing everything I could because my oldest felt a lot of stress from the school side of the house. I was trying to make it not school. Like, I want you to learn, and I want you to enjoy learning. Because if I'm teaching you to hate learning, then that's going to last for a lifetime. And I don't want that. I want you to just enjoy the learning. And he felt so stressed out by all of the stuff that I've made it super relaxed. I was brought him in earlier, and he's driving me bonkers over here. He's a 9-month-old Belgian Malinois, so he's got a lot of energy. And I need to do something. He's stuck in a small office with me. But so I've been trying to avoid doing this, but I'm realizing now, I think I'm at a point where I need to put some of that structure in. The school year, quote unquote, is basically over. And I was only a couple weeks left for him in that. But I told him already, I said, no, I want to keep the education flowing. I want to keep the morning routines going and getting together and just discussing different things now that this book is over. Because the book is over doesn't mean that the learning is over. It just means that what I'm quote unquote required to teach you, which I'm not required to do much, but it is done. So I really appreciated going over your schedule. So before I go into that schedule portion, you obviously have adjusted the way that you raise your kids a lot based off of your experience as a kid. How did you work through mentally? Because there's people I'm sure listening that are like, they're not on that path yet. They haven't worked through some of their history before. It's one of the reasons I love starting about tell me who your dad is. Yeah. Because that oftentimes will tell us why we do what we do. In this case, it says a lot about why you do what you do, right? You saw some of that stuff, and now your dad is seeing, wow, I totally see what, like, because my parents look at me and they're like, where did you come from? Like, my sisters are the same way. Did he grow up in the same house as us? And it just, I got exposed to different people, which changed the way, obviously at a young age, you had that mindset to go somewhere else and change your environment. So walk me through that understanding and how you got to that path.
Yeah, a lot of self-reflection. One thing I would say is I'm very good at looking at myself.
Been good at looking at yourself, or is that something you had to learn?
I think I was always good at it, and I'll tell you why. I think it was a lack of confidence. Okay, so I think it was all a lack of confidence where I used to think that I wasn't good enough. So I always wanted to please everyone else. And so because you want to please everyone else, you don't think you're good enough or you're not valuable. You're always looking at yourself, right? So I would do something and I would look for like approval. And if I didn't get that approval, then I'm like, oh man, I must have did something wrong. So I would say that's been my trajectory or my path in life, but it's led me into a really good place to grow because I'm constantly challenging who I am. Like, oh, these people didn't like it.
How did you get to where, like, how did your mentality change to the point where now you're raising the kids the way you are? Obviously, that was a path.
So it was all about looking at inside. And when you start seeing anger management and then you start having a therapist that can help you, because I had a business therapist, I like first time I opened up a business, I was like, what the hell? Like all these guys are running multi-million-dollar companies and I could barely keep my head above water with one, right? And so you get the help. And so what I am is I'm a coach for my kids. So I teach them to look at themselves. There's no such thing as blaming others in my home. You blame yourself. You blame yourself, and then you identify what that problem is or why it came about, and then we learn from it. There's no right or wrong. There's no, I made it. Mistakes is how we learn and get better. All growth mindset. So when my daughter is like, hey, Adrian's yelling at me, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, hold on a second. Look at yourself. What did you do? What are you reacting to? And it's always introspective. And now I'm starting to see it happen by themselves. And I think by the time they become adults, they're going to have such an advanced personality or mindset on how they can look internally and adjust versus I didn't get there until I was older. I had bits and pieces of it when I was in my 20s. They're having it as children. Yeah. You know, so that's what I would say is really just having coaches around. Coach your kid. Your kids need coaches. My kids have a mindset coach they meet with once a week. Literally, they go on Zoom and they have a mindset coach they meet with once a week. Her name is Kelly. She's awesome. She's in New Jersey. I literally email her and be like, hey, my son doesn't like to get teased. He told me that there's this kid in class that teases him and he doesn't like to lose. So the kid, when he loses at something, the other kid, he'll say, I won to my son, and that will make him feel angry. And so my son comes up, he's like, I don't like him, I hate him, blah, blah, blah. And he always says he won and he lost. And I had to explain to him, I said, your friend wants to feel important. Yeah. And I'm like, and you want to feel important. And I'm like, and I get it. And I was like, I'm going to tell you something. Whether you win or lose, you're important.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I want you to tell your friend that he's important. And he was like, well, what does that mean? And I had to go down the rabbit hole with him. And so I emailed the mindset coach. I said, hey, my son doesn't like to get teased. He wants to win. He wants to feel important. Can we talk about it? And then she'll coach him on the side. So they're constantly getting coached by me, by the mindset coach, by other people, by jujitsu. And that's just, listen, you don't see it, but it's incremental.
Yeah.
And I know now, I feel so good about it because my friend that came on Tuesday to visit me from Cali, he's got 2 kids. And the last time he saw my son, my son was 4. My son is 7. So at 4, the kid barely spoke. At 7, he's having full-fledged adult conversations, asking questions. He's got introspective perception of himself. And my friend's a PhD from Harvard. So the guy's super smart.
Yeah.
And he's looking at my son. He was, what the hell, dude? You're 7? And he was just like, and I told him, he was like, what are you doing? Now his son is on a different level. Like the kid is 11. He can talk to you about, he was talking to me about a podcast. He was like, hey, how many viewers does this podcast that you're going to be on have? What are you getting from it? Are you doing it for this reason, this reason, this reason? Are you going to push anything? Did you prepare yourself? I looked at him and was like, take it easy, dude. All right, I'm just going in to talk to some friends.
The guy barely has any people listening to him at all.
Then I'm like, he was telling me things about podcasts I didn't even know about. I felt like a proud dad because I'm like, man, I didn't realize how much my son has changed in the last 3 years. And when he saw my friend and my friend's just like, dude, your son is awesome. He's so cool. He just asked the right question.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm doing the right thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. I get a lot of those with even my 5-year-old when he has those conversations with people because we have never once, I hate like the baby talk nonsense and all that. No, I talk to my kid like they're an adult because that's what they are going to be. So like, why should I train him to learn like an itty bitty baby when he's not, right? So I just have good conversations with him. Like, and they're always willing to ask questions. And, well, what does that word mean? Because I don't use kindergarten language with them. I use adult language. And that's, if I say the word superficial, he's going to say, okay, what does superficial mean? And then we'll discuss it. This is what it means. So this word, you have your dictionary right there, your kid's dictionary. Let's look it up. There's still, I'm going to try to relate 2 of the things that you've talked about because I was very much the same way, told that like it always seemed shameful to cry, which has made it difficult for me to have conversations with my kids about when I see them crying, it almost brings back those feelings that I had then because I know I haven't done the work internally that I should to correct some of my history, even though I know some of the negativity that it's coming from. I have yet to really pull some of those strings that you've already pulled and talked about. So how do you make sure that, because even right now as a dad, I'm doing all of these things and I get complimented all the time about my kids. And I'm like, boy, I'm still failing miserably. I don't think I'm doing enough. I know I need to be doing that. So
I think you're being hard on yourself and you're not failing. Okay.
Well, no, I know I'm not literally failing. There's still that feeling like, man, there's got to be more here.
Yeah. So listen, at the end of the day, no matter what we do as parents, we're always going to traumatize our kid in some way. Okay. That kid is going to grow up. You could be like, your dad could have been super strict and you're super easy. And then your kid grows up and you're like, oh, you were too easy on me. There's always going to be some backfire. But here's what I do in terms of sensitivity with my kid. When my son cries, I come to him and I give him a big hug. All of our hugs are a minimum of 20 seconds. I want to feel his energy and I want him to feel my energy. And I hug him. And I just feel like, dude, I love that you're crying. I love it so much. You know why? Because you're being vulnerable with me. And you feel confident and comfortable to be vulnerable with me. And that's your way of expressing how you feel. And I love the way you express how you feel. And I love that you express it to me because I'm your biggest fan. I'm your best friend. And you could tell me and you could do anything around me and I'm going to love it and I'm going to respect it. And when you're ready, you could tell me how you feel inside when you're ready. And usually right after about 30 seconds to a minute, he comes out. He's like, Dad, I'm sad because of this. And I'm like, yeah, I'd be sad because of that too. And I walk him down the path. I never negate his feelings. Oh, you shouldn't be sad because of that. I'm like, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about why you feel sad because of that. And I start putting perspective into his life because he doesn't understand the perspective. So like, for instance, he might come up and say he's sad because he got his sister took something from him. Okay. And so he's crying, this and that. Or actually, the last time that he was sad, my wife yelled at him. So he comes to me, he's sad. He's like, Mom yelled at me. After he's crying, this and that. And I'm just like, why are you sad? And he was like, Mom yelled at me. I was like, cool. And I was just like, why did Mom yell at me? He's like, oh, because she wanted me to go upstairs and go to bed, and I wanted to play. And I'm like, okay, so why did she yell at you? And he was like, because I didn't want to go upstairs. Okay, why didn't you want to go upstairs? And we go down the rabbit hole. And he's like, because I want to stay up. And I'm like, okay, so what's the benefit of staying up? And he was like, oh, I get to play more. I'm like, does playing ever go away? And then he was just like, no. And I'm like, all right, can you play tomorrow? And he's, yeah. And I was like, okay, so let's talk about the benefits of sleep. And then he was just like, well, the benefit of sleep is like, I'm going to be rested. I'm not going to get sick and that. And I'm like, okay, so we have one that will never go away. You're going to keep playing. If you get sick, you're not going to be able to play. You're going to be tired. You're not going to grow optimally. So you're not going to get to experience this. So maybe Mom just didn't know how to explain that at that moment because she got frustrated. I was like, and do you ever get frustrated? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, so when you get frustrated, we have to communicate. I literally brought them both in. And I said, I called my wife and I called my son. I was like, now I want you guys to have a dialogue. You are frustrated. Why? You are frustrated. Why? And they started having a conversation. And 2 seconds later, he was happy. And my wife was happy because my wife couldn't express how she was feeling either. So she just got angry. Usually frustration turns into anger because you don't know what the trigger of the frustration is, right? And so she starts telling him her perspective. Hey, I've been working all day. I'm cleaning up after you. Like, you're making a mess and you're doing this and I need a break and this. And I looked at my son. I was like, dude, Mom's tired.
Yeah.
She's been working all day. I was like, she needs a break. I was like, when you go to bed, that's her time. And we all need our time. And I was like, can you respect that? And he was like, yeah, dissolved. Now, it's hard. I have patience for it. I have so much patience for that stuff. But at the same time, I'm impatient with other things. But when it comes to the kids, I'm extremely patient in walking them down that path. So I would say that's how I talk to my son when it comes to... Now, my daughter's a little different. My daughter's not as emotional. She doesn't like being hugged. She doesn't like that. So what I have to have is more of an intellectual conversation with my daughter. And I have to do it because she's ADHD. So what ends up happening is I have to stimulate her while I'm having that conversation. Okay, you want to go rollerblading? And she'll be like, yeah, I'll go rollerblading. You want to go for a walk? So she's got to be doing something, and then I could extract everything I need from her. But yeah, that's it, man. I just always show them I care, and what that's led to in my relationship with my son and my daughter, and more so my son, is he just always it was an open door policy. He just comes up to me and he tells me, hey, I want to talk to you. And we just have a full conversation.
When I'm chatting with my kids right now, it's only my sons because my daughter's just shy of a year old as we talk about this. But boy, as my son is yelling at my dog in the background, I don't know how much you can hear that. But so as I'm talking to them about their emotions, I try to explain like, hey, emotions are always game. I'm perfectly fine with emotions. I am not perfectly fine with actions that follow the emotions, right? We can't act out in our emotions. How do you find the line between the actions and the emotions, like helping them be able to express their emotions without the actions that can follow it? Or what level do you try to balance those two?
Yeah. So like I said, when you speak about actions, a lot of them are usually anger actions, right? Oh, they threw something, or they yelled, or they hit something, or something like that. So I don't try to deal with that as much as I try to deal with the frustration. I try to get them to identify when they're frustrated. And when they start identifying when they're frustrated, then I ask them like, okay, cool, you're frustrated. So what does that mean about you? And I walk them down the rabbit hole. And usually they want control because they want to feel powerful, or they don't want to feel weak. They want to be noticed. They want to feel important, and they don't feel heard, or they don't feel valuable. Once you identify those root causes, then I hit them with, hey, dude, you're super important. Or, hey, babe, you're already powerful. You're already in control. You're in control of your life. You have power. And once I hit them with that, they start identifying their triggers. That's so important because I think this is where my parents failed is when we would get frustrated, they would shut it down. And then the frustration initially turns into sadness, then it turns into anger, and then it turns into some, I don't know, whatever, craziness. But if you start identifying like why you're frustrated, it always goes back to a belief system. And listen, dude, before you even start with the kid, it's got to start with you. So like this happened.
No, I'm perfect. I don't have to do anything.
So a few months ago, I got an email from my daughter's teacher. She didn't do her homework. And I instantly got triggered. Now I know when I'm triggered now because I'm so aware of it. I was just like, I was angry, like frustrated, angry. And I go down the rabbit hole. I'm like, hold on a second. Why am I angry? She didn't do her homework because my wife didn't double check behind her. Is it really my wife's job? And then I'm like, let's go down even deeper. Like what does that mean about me? And then I'm like, okay, so if my daughter doesn't do her homework, that means she's not going to do good in school. If she doesn't do good in school, that means she's going to fail. If she fails, that means she's not going to do good in life. If she doesn't do good in life, that means she's not independent. That means I'm not a good dad. And it literally, I walked this and I'm like, am I a good dad? I'm like, yeah, I'm a great dad. Does her not doing her homework mean that she's going to fail? No, it doesn't mean shit. And now when you learn to dissolve your own frustrations, it's so easy to teach your kids how to dissolve their frustration. Your kids are a mirror image of you. A lot of the reason we keep grinding forward like that is really, it's a scarcity mindset. We're always afraid that we're not going to have it. So we got to keep pushing forward. And I think people lose sight that success leaves clues. So people who are successful have probably been successful before. Maybe it wasn't financially, but maybe it was in school, or maybe it was at sports, or it was something else. So you could see them through childhood. They've been successful. That kid has done well. And it's all a culmination of decision making. The choices you make today affect your tomorrow. And so success is really a culmination of those decisions. So they're always afraid, and me being included, is, oh man, I'm not going to have enough money to support my family, or I got to keep building so that I'm safe. But what ends up happening is you have this finite amount of time with your children. And that finite amount of time is going to come to an end. And what I mean by that is your child right now lives in your home, and you get to see him, and you are his world. And at some point, he's going to want to go to college, or he's going to want to start working. And then his time is going to be taken by something else. And you become, I get to see my kid maybe on the weekends. And then eventually he gets married, or she gets married, and they have children. And then it becomes even less and less. Here's how I structured my life. And again, because I'm so regimented and routine, I was like, okay, go to school in my 20s. Build my business in my 30s, spend my time with my children in my 40s. And then at some point in my 50s, they're going to start doing their own thing. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to work for purpose, do only purpose. Now, obviously that didn't work out like that because I can't just sit around and do nothing all day, but I found my purpose in my 40s. So now I get to align my purpose. So I sat there and thought, okay, my kids are in school for 6-7 hours a day. And I'm getting to see them for 1 to 2 hours a day. I'm like, that's trash. Yeah. It's trash. And I'm like, we're going to shift that. So I'm like, we're going to do the homeschooling. I'm going to be the biggest influence in their life, not their teacher who's got their elementary education degree. And I want to pass on my coaching experience and my network of people and my mindset. What we're going to do is now I'm going to shift from seeing them 2 hours to seeing them 8 and 9, right? And then the rest, they get to go play with their friends or explore activities or do other things. And that's fine. But majority of the time I get to spend with them because I only have that finite amount of time to do that. And that's for the next 8 to 10 years. And then when they go out into the real world and they have to build their own, they'll always be like, man, I try to be as involved as possible. I coach the basketball team for YMCA. I'm their jiu-jitsu coach. And you learn real life lessons on the mat. Every time we start, there's a life lesson. And when they finish, there's a life lesson. And it's beautiful because I get to pour into all these kids, and those kids are part of my son's community and my daughter's community, and they're both in jiu-jitsu. And then at home, I get to bond with them, right? So I'm like their superhero. Like my son used to literally call me his superhero. Like when I'd walk into his school, he'd get so excited. He'd be like, that's my best friend. That's my superhero, right? My dad's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's got muscles. He's a doctor. He helps people. He's this. So we have to show our kid, we're showing by example. And that example is, hey, I want to be here for you. Not, hey, I'm too busy right now. Can you leave? I'll come and talk to you later. And then later becomes tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes the weekend. And now they're learning versus, oh, my dad always makes time for me, no matter what. And I don't give a shit about the money. I care about you guys.
When you're sitting there coaching your kids and you're talking to them about certain things, and how did you develop the way you want them to view the world? Because obviously the way we view the world is different than how they are going to review it, no matter what we're trying with them. So how did you develop the view that you want them to have and the purposeful direction that you're giving them to help guide them onto that view?
So I always start with the basic needs, right? Like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is I need my kids to feel safe, secure. And so it all starts with that, because if they have safety, they have security, they have love, then they've already gotten past the first stage. The second stage, because most kids, like if you see a kid who's like really shy or doesn't know how to talk to people, there's some type of safety issue there. They're afraid of something. So maybe they're afraid of being judged or afraid of ridicule or afraid of that person. So safety is very important. And I build that in them like, hey, I got your back no matter what. I'm watching. Nobody's going to get near you. Like, you're awesome. Just the fact that you went over there, you're awesome. So I make them really feel safe. Once we've gotten past safety, they become themselves and they just release. Because if you ever notice, when you're playing, kids playing basketball, after they score, what do? They look over to their parent. When they mess up, they look over to their parent. They're always looking for security, safety, and importance. They want to feel valuable. They want to feel safe. They want to feel secure. So if you give them those, I constantly drill it. I got your back no matter what. Like, my son will be like, Dad, what if the strongest man in the world came and tried to kidnap me? I'd be like, I'd kill him. He'd be like, and he gets all happy. And he was like, what if Spider-Man tried? I was like, I'd kill him. He was like, but you can't kill Spider-Man. I was like, bro, Spider-Man ain't got nothing on me, dude. So I just want him to feel safe always. So that safety builds their confidence. It gives them their first level of confidence. And from that point, the coaching and how I want them to view the world is, hey, I want you to view the world as safe, because I always have your back. Now, as they get older, they're going to realize more and more that the world is not a safe place. So you have to learn to protect yourself, and here's what you do. But as long as I'm there, I got you, no matter what. And so I'm always there with them while these situations are happening, because I've already given them that feel of confidence and safety. And over time, so like my son now, he will randomly walk up to grown-ups. So we were at that playground. There was a guy, man, he had his kid, but the guy had a football. And the guy probably was like 40. My son literally walks up to him. He was like, you want to play football? Play catch? And he just walked up to the guy. The guy was 40. And the guy was like, sure. And they just start playing catch. That guy has no idea that that's my son. But my son felt confident and safe because he knew I was there. That's super important, is to establish that. And I know you do the same thing with your kids, right? You're always like, make them feel safe. And so that's the first level of confidence in your children. And then you encourage them to do things that are outside of their comfort zone. I want you to walk up to that person and ask them for the bill. I want you to pay with that credit card. I want you to go up to that person and ask them, hey, where can I find a restaurant? I want you to go up and to those kids and say, hey, would you guys like to play? And I'm like, guess what? The worst thing they can say is no. And then once they realize that it's not that scary, it becomes so easy.
You mentioned something earlier, hero child. Can you explain to me what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. When we're talking about family of origin work, so family of origin, that's the system you grew up in. And it doesn't have to be like mom, dad, siblings. It could be grandparents. It could be neighbors. It could be a coach that you spend a lot of time with, right? But that system in which we were raised in those formative years, in a perfect world, children don't adapt to the system. The caregivers adapt the system to the child and protect the child within the system, right? So that's why with a 1-year-old, I imagine you're rearranging where the breakable stuff in the house is, and maybe you're getting the little locks on the cabinets in the kitchen again, so they can't get it right. That is adapting the environment to the child rather than the other way around. When that doesn't happen relationally, now we're not talking about swallowing house cleaning supplies, but we're talking about being safe relationally.
Yeah.
It's okay to be me. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be vulnerable because I'm going to be protected. Those sorts of things. Children will take on different roles. And there's a hero child, there's lost child, there's something called scapegoat. The hero child is the one who is this falsely empowered child where they feel like their place in the family system comes from caretaking others. So my value and my worth comes from being a hero. I'm loved here. I have a place in this system because I'm so smart, because I'm so helpful, because I'm really good at this stuff, because I earn my keep around here in some way. That's a false empowerment of a child, because the reality is children can't take care of adults. Right? Yeah. But if I grow up believing that's the case, then I'm going to show up later in life thinking that my value, my worth, my place, my security in this relationship is going to be from me being a caretaker, me being a servant, me being a hero, whatever language you want to use around that.
So how did that continue to show up as an adult, or what does that look like later?
Yeah, it absolutely did. I feel the need to say this because my parents are both alive and I have a great relationship with them and they're wonderful. Truly, I'm not just saying that, they're amazing parents. I'm grateful that I get to enjoy an adult friendship with them now. We spent Easter over there, and long after the 50 other guests were gone, my wife and I and our kids are over there hanging out, and it was a blast. So I'm really grateful for that. And just through a combination of things, and this is nothing that parents do on purpose. Our kids, Adam, our kids are going to have these stories too. But I became, to my mom, I took on this belief. I know now it wasn't real, but I took on this belief around needing to be a hero. I'm the wise one, I'm the smart one, or whatever. I can perform and I can step in and be whatever. And so the way that would show up for me in adulthood was particularly with groups of women. It was different with men. Okay. But with women, I'm Superman. So as a young pastor, 22 years old, I'm senior pastor of this church, asked me to be the guest speaker at this month's ladies Bible study. And I step in there and I'm running the show. I've got charisma. I'm out front. I'm confident, but stick me in a room full of all the deacons, all these old men, and I'm quiet and I'm just trying to get through it and not say anything and just blend in. Very different role.
Interesting. Yeah, I could totally see that. I often talk to a lot of people about finance and real estate education and that type of stuff. And I try to apply it. So there's a book that I really recommend to a lot of people all the time. It's Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, where it kind of talks to you a lot about where you get your thought process on money. And I talk to people about that all the time, where we've built a wireframe in our brain through, you call it the family of origin, through how we grew up on how we look at money. And you could do that in relationships. You could look at that in how is it that how I react in relationships in this way, likely because of either things I saw and ran towards or things I saw and ran away from. And it's probably going to be one or the other. Often I talk about it in money because I saw my parents paycheck to paycheck all the time. So that's what I did for a very long time. I had no idea anything different. And it sounds like and I talk to people about that as well. You could look at your relationship. How is it that you communicate with your kids? It's probably because you're either running away from how you were communicated with, or because that's how you just learned how to do it. That cycle of abuse going an abused child becomes the abuser who abuses children, who then becomes an abuser, and it just goes around.
Now, thankfully, the likelihood of an abuser having been abused is very high, but the likelihood of an abuser abusing is low. But you increase your chances of being an abuser just by being abused. So you increase your chances of being a paycheck to paycheck person by watching somebody do that same thing.
Early on, children are very concrete. It takes a while for children to get to that place of abstract thought and concepts, right? Like God and spirituality is in many ways abstract, although we want to make it concrete. And should in every practical and accurate way we can. But so what happens is we come into the world, okay, where we need attachment. In fact, to the point that before attachment theory arrived on the scene, a guy named John Bowlby is the father of attachment theory. He was a British psychologist in the early and mid 20th century. The primary line of thought was that like an infant attaching to the mother was because the mother fed the infant. So the attachment relationship was considered a secondary drive to the drive for food, essentially, sustenance, right? So the thinking was the infant attaches to the mother because the mother provides the food. Come around the 40s and 50s, there's all kind of research coming out that is just not true. That actually these children need that attachment as a primary drive. And so that's where you had like Russian orphanages where there were terrible experiments where kids died because they were provided food and shelter, they were cleaned, but they weren't held, they weren't nurtured, they weren't being talked to and all of this. And it was called failure to thrive. And many of them just died, right? Because what's happening is, so in psychology, there's these concepts called the internal working model of self and other. So I have this internal working model of self. So in other words, that's who I see myself as, how I experience myself, my identity, and then internal working model of other, who I believe you to be, who I experience you as, who I'm anticipating you to be. And in infancy, those two are related. Right now, we both got kids about the same age. That 1-year-old, the way we approach that child, that baby, the way we respond when the baby cries, the way we mirror the baby's face, the baby goes, oh, and we go, oh, what's the matter? And we're mirroring the baby. We're responsive. And all of that is training that child to understand who he or she is. So the mirrored experience of the other and who the other is experienced as activates and is the foundation of the sense of who we are. So carry that into adulthood, right? And this is why, let's say someone had an abusive father, okay? And then they get around men in adulthood and they puff up and they get aggressive or they shrink, whatever that response was. It's because a particular working model of other gets activated and it creates in them, or it activates in them, a corresponding internal working model of self.
No, I love it. Yeah, I enjoy those conversations. How do you as a dad now look at the theories that you look at, the past that you have, look at what you experience in your practice and say, how am I raising my kids? What should I be saying to my kids? How should I be talking to my kids to make sure that I forgot who it was that said, I'd be like, there's no chance that you haven't screwed up your kid already. So it's just a matter of how much you screw your kid up and in what ways you screw your kid up. Not because we are still human. We're all still going to do things that we shouldn't. And I can't count how many times I've had to apologize to my kids for doing something that I should not have done. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a view on how we should be fathers to them, to know that we're treating them right, that we're not causing long-term harm to them, especially as we're quote unquote working in the business for our kids. So how is it that you practically be a dad while thinking about all these things and making sure that you are not doing any of that long-term harm?
So I'll give you like a pithy, catchy answer, and then I'll make it more practical if you want me to. I want my daughters to look at me as their father and learn what their heavenly father's, and knowing that I will do that imperfectly, I want to own it with them every time I fail at that. So if I could do that, if I can show up representing the character of their heavenly father, trying to show them the love to whatever degree it's humanly possible for me, that I know their heavenly father has for them. And every single time I fail at that, acknowledge it, own it as such. Then I think I'm doing a pretty dang good job. Okay. So what does that mean? That means, guess what? I need to do self-regulation. When my 3-year-old, when I'm running late, and this is this morning, okay? I'm running late. It's my day to take her to school, to preschool. I've got an 8:30 appointment. I know, like, I'm doing all the number crunching in my head, and she is sitting on the floor. She wants to wear these socks and these shoes, and these socks don't even fit her anymore, and these shoes aren't appropriate for school. And we're like, what? What am I doing here first so that the way I show up with her is appropriate? And because it's going to pour into her, and it's still kind and loving, which doesn't mean she can do whatever she wants, which I'll say that now. And I'm totally blanking on his name. It'll come to me later and I'll give him credit. But there's a psychotherapist up in the Pacific Northwest. He's written a whole bunch of books. He's at Seattle School of Theology. That's enough for someone to Google and figure out who I'm talking about. But he wrote a book on parenting, and he said, children want to know 2 things. Am I loved, and can I do whatever I want? Yes, no.
For those of you not listening, you need to come on to see all of the amazing things Joe can do with his computer.
But those are the 2 things, right? Am I loved, and can I do whatever I want? And we're trying to find that place where they always know, yes, I'm loved. No, I can't do whatever I want. Like that's the sweet spot. But sometimes they can do what they want, right? And that's fun too, to get to do a little bit of spoiling, a little bit of splurging, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
There's that show or that movie, Yes Day, where the parents will let they cannot say no to anything the kids request. And my kids have asked me, can we do a Yes Day? I said, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
That's not a healthy thing to
Sounds like
do
a terrible idea.
There's this part there they go through, and I didn't actually watch the kids, but I think my wife was with them. Mom was watching that with you, right? They go through a car wash with all the windows down. I'm like, do you know how destroyed my car would be if I said yes to that? That's a terrible idea. Why would I do that?
Terrible idea. Yeah.
It's a horrendous idea. You get soap in your eyeballs. Everybody be crying by the time we got out of there. I'd have $40,000 in damage in the car, and I don't even have a $40,000 car. I don't, jeez.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I do like that concept of, am I loved, and can I do whatever I want? So that you could totally see that in a child on a daily basis, right? Because they totally want to do whatever they want. That is for sure.
I'll just also say, I think adults want to know the same thing.
Oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah. I totally want to do whatever I want a lot of times, right?
Absolutely.
But sadly, I still have to be an adult and figure that out. And I have to teach my kids to be an adult and do all that.
Look at there.
Popping up in between my arms.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What, he just threw something at me. Now he's got to come back and get it.
No?
Really? Peek around? Yeah, that's good. But you still have schoolwork to do, you bum. The joys of homeschooling. Yes.
Yes.
But awesome. So one thing that I tell my boys, hey, buddy, what do I say my goal in life is? When it comes to you, what's my goal? What do I need to do? You don't what? To be a better what?
What?
No, for you to be a better what? Oh my goodness, now he's just being a punk. All right, so my goal.
It's okay. I get it.
It's all making sense now to be a better chicken. What the dickens? This kid. So my goal is to raise better men than me, right? And in order to do that, to have my kids look at me as their father, as they would, as a mirror of what their heavenly father would look like. I have like that visual image. And my goal for my daughter now, because no matter what, again, 2024 says, she'll never be a man. That's just not a possible thing. But so she can't be a better man than me, but she can know what to look out for as far as who to marry, right? Like she needs to be able to know, okay, to marry a better man than me. So if I can represent what it is to be a really good husband to my wife, that's a good representation for her when she grows up to go, okay, this is what I need to look for in a man to marry, is somebody who treats me the same way my dad treats my mom. And again, with the kids, they need to be able to see me or with the boys, they need to be able to see me treat my wife in that way so they know how to treat their wives. When I fail miserably at that, which I will on an almost daily basis, I need to be able to own up to that and show them that same thing.
Yeah. And I think this is encouraging, just to back that up, what you're saying there about owning it. And so going back to all the research from attachment theory. So I mentioned earlier that we can have secure attachment relationships or insecure attachment relationships. And let's say we took our youngest, right, our 1-year-olds, or almost one. And let's say from the time we brought them home, because my wife and I, conceivably, we could have done this. We set up little Lottie Joe's life so that she was never alone from at least one of us, right? We could sleep right outside her crib. We could always be right behind her. She's learning to crawl or walk or scoot. We could be right there. And so that she never experiences a rupture in this attachment to her parental units. That would not create secure attachment. It would create this preoccupation, this anxiety of what would happen if you did go. It would create fear. Secure
and I would imagine as an adult, everybody is here for
terrible. It'd be terrible. Secure attachment is the result of continuous ruptures being repaired. So in other words, there are ruptures, there are mistakes, there are moments where nobody's there and they don't come, or there's a misattunement. I'm not getting what you're saying, or I lose my temper and I say something angrily or whatever, but I repair it. If I consistently repair after ruptures, I'm training that child to believe ruptures are no big thing because we know how to repair. So the experience of the rupture in this fallen, broken world is needed for the repair so that what we get after the rupture is better than what could have been before, which is actually the gospel, right? Like rupture and repair. That's the gospel. That's sin and the death of Jesus and our faith in him and being united to him. This is in nature. This is like all over the place that we see this tatter.
So our ability to show our children the healthy repair after a rupture, what does a healthy repair look like, especially to because you have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? Or 1-year-old and a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. Yeah. So obviously it looks different from a 1-year-old's perspective as it does a 3-year-old's, as it does my 9-year-old. So how do you represent what a healthy repair after that rupture looks like?
With a 1-year-old, it's they wake up in the middle of the night. She wakes up, she's crying because we're not there, and we come.
Yeah,
that's a repair, right? Or the dog barks and scares her, and we come and we soothe her. That's a repair. Or my 1-year-old is like hypersensitive to, she's crawling around and she reaches for me and I'm busy and I turn to finish what I'm doing. That she loses it. It's like that turning of my back, it hits her deeply, which was actually surprising to me. But you know what? I turn around, I pick her up, I soothe her. You know, so that's 1-year-old. With my 3-year-old, who is crazy verbal for her age, I can actually say things like, hey, Daddy yelled a minute ago, didn't he? I yelled at you about that. I'm so sorry. I didn't need to yell about that. I got frustrated and I lost my temper. I'm very sorry. Can you forgive me? Or I hope you'll forgive me, or whatever language you want. Different people have different language around that. What we don't want to do, what a lot of people's experiences in their homes is defensiveness, ignoring when mistakes were made, all of that kind of stuff. That's the bottom line. You say, I messed up. We want our kids to know it's okay to be imperfect because that's reality.
Yeah.
And we also want to teach them the difference between a mistake and like an aggression or misbehavior that's intentional. We have to teach them that by not just how we respond to them, but also how we model for them our own mistakes and misbehavior. Get your reality check around I'm not perfect. Have a conversation with the people who know you best, or do some reflective journaling or something like that. And just get real comfortable with the fact that you make mistakes. You screw up as a dad. You screw up as a husband. Okay. That's reality. Okay. Because once we're in reality, now we can do something. Okay. And I think a good next step is a lot of us need to change our thinking about emotions. A lot of us were raised having certain beliefs or messages. They may have not been communicated to us directly, but we somehow or another kind of pick up on these beliefs. Oh, it's not okay to be angry, for example. That's not true. One of the things I say to my daughter is, you can always tell me if you're angry, even if you're angry with me. If I made you sad, I want you to tell me you're sad. The emotions are welcome. I'm a safe person for you to come and you have whatever emotion you want. Now, guess what? There may be some boundaries around what we can and can't do in our anger. It is not okay to throw plates on the floor.
That's what I tell my kids. Like, emotions are okay, actions are not. Emotions are normal. Yeah.
That's right. Emotions are normal. But that comes back to, am I loved and can I do whatever I want? Am I safe? Am I safe here with whatever my emotions are? Yeah, absolutely. I want to know that. Thank them for it. Another thing that I think can be really helpful is to understand that validation does not equal agreement. So if my daughter is 3-year-old is absolutely having a meltdown that I won't let her wear these shoes that are 2 sizes too small to school, but that's what she wants to wear. And she's mad about it. And she's telling me, I'm mad. Dad, you made me mad. Can I validate her anger without thinking that means I'm agreeing with her? Well, I understand you want to wear these shoes. And I'm telling you, you can't. That makes sense that you're angry. Yeah. It's also my job to take care of you. And part of taking care of you is to say yes and no, because there are certain things I know are better for you or worse for you, whatever. So validate your kids. Validate their emotional response. That's not the same as agreement. You're not telling them that they're right in their thinking. I know that I'm a new dad. I'm only 3.5 years into this, but I did say this earlier, but I think this is what's coming up for me having this conversation is how critical it is that we're aware of the stories, our stories, in a conscious and intentional way, because we are getting to actually help create the stories our kids are forming.
Yeah.
And what I want to do as a dad is I want to be a dad where they can tell me what those stories are. I'm safe enough for them to say, this is what I'm thinking, or this is what I'm believing, or this is what I'm seeing. And that I can help shape that in an even more intentional way. Got to do my own work first. Got to be open to that. Got to be safe enough for them around that. That's who I want to be for sure.
Today, I'm super excited to talk to Jeremy Cortez. I was amazed by a lot of stuff you're doing, Jeremy, and I'm really looking forward to chatting about it.
So my youngest is on the spectrum. He's autistic. We got the diagnosis when he was 3. This was during what pandemic started March of 2020. He got diagnosed June of 2020.
Cool.
So that was fun. Yeah.
And you're in California. So
yeah. Oh yeah. So everything's locked down. We can't do anything to save our life. And yeah, it was an interesting experience. Now, what ended up happening was, how do we learn how to parent? We learn from our parents. We learn from the models that we were privy to. Okay. So great. I grew up in the traditional sense. Don't talk back. I'm parent. I'm right. You're wrong. I know what bar soap tastes like. I know what a belt buckle feels like. Yeah. It's just like I grew up in an older generation or in a different generation. I parent my first son. It works. I parent my second son. It doesn't work. Or let me rephrase. It doesn't manipulate behavior. And so, okay, that means I have to change in order for him to learn. I need to adjust my tactics of communication. Now, okay, there's a joke among Filipinos where we say that our conversation starts at yelling and then it just goes up in volume from there. So we're a very loud individual. And so whenever I am angry and I yell, I project the room. That doesn't work for someone who doesn't understand.
yeah.
And so it's okay. I have to change. Here's the other part to this. Every one of my triggers as a parent that was given to me by someone or another were all the things that he does. Don't talk back. What does he do? Don't hit, don't spit, don't throw, don't yell, don't scratch, don't da-da-da-da. And when he gets unconscious, he does all those things. And what happens to me? I react by saying, you're not supposed to do any of these things. And so throughout this process of the pandemic, I'm getting a crash course of evolution of self. And I am now trying to figure out how to communicate with a child that doesn't respond to any of my communication. I now have to be extremely mindful of my emotional state, my words, my tone, my look, even my energy. You know how it's like you can feel the tension in the room? He can feel it in another room. So it's like if I have a bad day at work, I really need to work that out before I step into the house because he'll feel it. And so again, my son's my greatest teacher. I had to learn by trial by fire. It was just this knowing thyself in every single day. What can I do for myself so that I can do for him? And this is actually the basis of why I got back into coaching. because this whole premise of putting on your mask before you can help someone put on theirs is the foundation of my message in terms of parenting.
Yeah.
I would not be able to take care of my son or be able to raise him and teach him and guide him had I not taken care of myself first.
Yeah.
So it's impossible. I'm sorry. It's not possible for me. So there was this come to Jesus moment where I'm overweight. I don't work out. I'm not eating very well. I don't sleep very much. I don't do drugs and I don't drink, but like my vices have become eating and just binge watching TV all day because there's nothing else to do. And so slowly but surely, I started taking care of my health. I ended up finding jujitsu of all things. And it's, oh my goodness, here is this place where I can put all my force, aggression on another human being. And at this moment, I can't hurt them.
Uh-huh.
And that became my therapy. I go in, I put all of my strength on somebody half my size, and they would just fold the clothes that I'm wearing with me in them. And I got my release. And sure enough, the aggression, the anger, the angst, the anxiety, all that stuff is out. I now see my son, he tantrums, and I'm like, hey buddy, what's up?
Yeah.
Oh, you're having a bad day? All right, come on. And so that's how I was able to communicate better, to be able to be more conscious as a parent. I had to take care of myself first in order for me to take care of my kids.
Yeah. And that makes loads of sense. And you're like the fifth person that one of the few that said it on the podcast, but I keep getting told I didn't do a better job of taking care of myself, and that's going to help me out a ton and where I'm at. But I always get so focused in all the other stuff that I got going on and being a dad and run all this and doing all that and here and there everywhere. And man, it gets exhausting. But I do notice for sure, like I haven't been back to the gym. My back has been completely killing me for the last couple of weeks, and I haven't been back to working out. My coach at the gym sent me a message like yesterday or the day before. Hey man, haven't seen you in a little bit. Where are you at? And I was like, I was planning to go back to the gym. I think it was yesterday. So they sent me the message. My intent was to go back, but I could barely get out of bed in the morning. I was like, oh, my back is still killing me. What the heck? But that would help even explain even this morning with my inability to communicate, as I was talking about earlier. Like I do so much better when I get my good workout in the morning. I'm feeling good. I get that stress release out. I'm feeling better about it. It just makes everything better. Like taking care of yourself. And that's just the fitness side. So it doesn't include like the mental side of it. And you're able to take care of yourself better mentally when you're in better shape and you're physically fit, you're doing all the stuff. I love that you're looking at that and that you realize that through the last couple of years. It's a difficult thing to maintain, especially when you're running a business and you're doing all the other stuff.
Parents, take care of yourself. If I were to share my priority list, I come first, then me and my wife, then me and my kids. That's mine. That's what I live by. And anyone who's listening can have the curiosity to actually figure out theirs. Because I can say this, life can be so stinking fun.
Yeah.
If they always say life is a game. Here's the ultimate game that no one knows how to play, except the people who know. You get to choose who the players are. You get to choose who you play with. You get to choose the rules. You get to choose the fun, experiences, how to win, all this, and no one knows how to play this game. Because we're taught in school a lot of external things, but this first has to start internal. Yeah. What is it that you want? What is it that you really want? And again, this goes back to truth versus projection. Can I be wrong here? I've had many times where I'll get furious with my kids and then I'll ask the question, why did you do that? They give me a legitimate answer and I'll look at them and I said, you know what? I'm wrong. You're absolutely right. I did tell you that. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. And as parents, again, kids learn more by what we do than what we say. So this has to start with us because no one wants to, we can be influencers online, but we are the ultimate influencers for our household. And it's not by what we say, but it really is by our actions. My wife the other day was looking at me and she goes, Elliot talks like you. And I'm like, I know.
And
So he uses the exact same phrases as me.
Yeah.
Very articulate. It's very conscious, and it's used in the right context. He's talking like you. And I'm like, good. Because I don't swear in the house. I don't like the most aggressive swear word you're ever going to hear me say is mother, father. It's just what it is. I don't swear in the house.
Yeah.
And it's not just if my kids are talking like me, I have no problem with it because there's nothing that comes out of my mouth that I don't regret saying. And then there are other people where it's like, oh, they said that. Oh, I say that. This is on you.
Yeah.
So that's my overarching message.
I'm excited to chat with Mike Wilson, and another fellow military veteran, law enforcement officer, entrepreneur, real estate guy. What do you think has been, because of that shift that you've had in your thought process, because of the way that you were raising your kids, how would you, and I don't want to say what would you change in the past, because I don't think that's a viable question, honestly, in most cases, but advice for dads out there who have a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 10-year-old that are those authoritarian dads right now, and making sure there is nothing but structure. What advice would you give to them based off of what you learned in Oconee and based off of what you've done in your past?
I would say it's important to have at least a little bit of fear of your parents, knowing that they can impose some discipline. But definitely with my daughter as well, like I've always tried to give them confidence and build them up, give them a good self-esteem. Because I think a lot of it starts, these kids and these teenage years, they get off track and confused because I don't think that they essentially received the attention or love from their parents, or their parents were distracted, or like you said, laissez-faire. Oh, I love you. Go do whatever you want, even if they're on peril. So build them up, instill confidence, very similar to what the military does. Like when you go into basic training, they break you down and then they build you up as a team. So I would say keep your standards and let them know that there are boundaries, but build them up, instill confidence, say kind things, let them know if they dress nice and when they do a good job, and let them believe that there's rewards for positive interactions and there's consequences for negative. And then don't be so hardline, and explain why you're doing things. So when I put my 3-year-old daughter in the corner because she hit somebody in the face, I explained to her, hey, every time you hit somebody in the face, you're going to get punished this way. And after a while, even though I was putting her in the corner and she's crying 6 times a night for 15 minutes, at some point she decides she doesn't want to be in the corner anymore. So I'm not going to hit people in the face, and the problem solved. And I've never had that problem again. But we have to put in the hard work up front and let them know that there's boundaries that everyone's got to fall into in any line of work. Entrepreneurs, there's always bosses, investors, somebody you have to answer to. So work within the boundaries, and you should be good if you with your confidence level and that kind of thing. My advice.
I got a lot closer to my dad much later. It took me a while to let go of some of what I felt he should have done. And I'm saying, this was the point of this, I'm saying this to encourage you as well, is it's not going to be immediate. It took me a while to really understand who my dad actually was and why he treated me the way he did. So I'm going to actually ask a question before I continue this. How much of your past do your sons know about you? Your upbringing, your real dad, all of that?
Yeah, pretty good amount. So when I gave my retirement speech for the Air Force, it was a well thought out document over months, praising my mom for everything, praising my kids, and trying to show them like, hey, here's what your dad did on the weekends. I deployed, because they were still young. They were 4 and 6 when I was out and about, and on the weekends when I wasn't there for things, I had to be a drill or whatever the case is.
How much heart have you given behind those conversations so that they can really understand this is the pain that dad has had over these years and why I've done some of the things I've done?
So one of my major character flaws is I'm an over talker and a mansplainer. So I'll have these conversations about life, success, work hard, play hard, whatever the topic is. And I seem to repeat myself from 3 different paths, and it ends up becoming white noise to them, I think. So I think they pick up on some tidbits, and I feel like I'm very objective with them. So when they do a bad job, I let them know. When they do a good job, I let them know. And I try to be as unbiased as possible, which might be a detriment in itself. I just want them to understand that their path is not going to be my path. And I said that. I would consider myself an overachiever at this point. Like, I was nominated for Officer of the Year 7 years in a row at the police department because I made a choice to be the best and the subject matter expert. I was nominated for Company Grade Officer of the Year. Like, these things don't happen by accident. And that's one of these quotes that go, but success doesn't happen by accident. So I try to teach them that. And I don't want them to be like me. I don't want them to, you don't have to be a valedictorian. You don't have to be a military guy. You don't have to be a business owner. I want you to be a good human, collective citizen, kind, charitable, take care of other people, be respectful to other people, and live a happy life. Whatever that means to them, that's what I encourage. Again, because of my 10 years of this is how it's going to be, do it this way. It's hard for them to probably believe and trust that I genuinely want that for them.
That's why I'm asking, and I'm trying to dig in a little bit as far as like, how vulnerable have you gotten with your kids to let them know why you've done some of the things you've done? Because it wasn't until I really learned some stories about my dad and talked to him on a much deeper level that I realized why he fathered me the way he did. And granted, for me, I didn't have that conversation until, or start to learn more about that until I was in my late 20s, early 30s, before I really started to understand. And I'm trying to throw over to you, make sure it's not until that they're not in their early 30s before they have the conversation with you, so that they can be a little closer to going, holy crap, I understand. Like, I got to a much deeper level with who my dad was and the experiences he had that led me to understand, wow, he wasn't able to give me the love that I wanted because he had never received any of that. Like, it just was something he was missing. And I'm not saying that's the case with you. I'm just saying that if you get more vulnerable and let them know, hey, I think it will break down some of those walls that you feel like are still there.
That's fair.
Because you're saying I want them to know it now, and I don't know if they're going to be able to see it. Well, they might not, because you still have your own walls up, where you're still protecting your own self from what was going on, so that you could stay driving forward. And shutting those walls down is not going to stop you from driving forward. If anything, it's going to help you drive more, because now you can be a little bit more free. But sitting down and having a true conversation of, hey, here's all of the heartbreak your dad has gone through. Here's where I know that I've failed you, and here's where I know that I've done well. I want you guys to know that and be intimately involved in this conversation, so that you guys can be on a different level.
I would say that's a fair point. I do still keep some walls up.
Yeah.
Just out of self-preservation back through my upbringing. But it's funny because my wife is not that way. She's very open. And then she has conversations with my mom and says, why is Mike this way? And she goes, I trained him to be that way. I told him at 18, he's getting out. Yeah. And even though I love him more than anything, I knew that success wasn't going to be hanging out in the hometown with your like gangster buddies playing basketball all the time. That's not what success is. So I told him, you're going to go to college. You're going to go figure it out. No one else in the family has ever graduated college. So she's like, you're getting out. You're going to go figure it out. Yeah. And my wife was like, oh, that explains so much, because that's how I treat my kids. I said, and my mom has told me the same quote over and over again. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to raise you to be a good human being, adult. Yeah. And later on, we can be cool. And we'll have drinks around the table when we visit. We'll go on trips, and we have a great relationship. But she was no love lost. Like, hey, go figure out your life. You're not going to hang out here and be a loser. Yeah. Cool. That's part of the way that I'm raising my children. Even though my 19-year-old lives on a very modest rent in a beautiful house with all the bells and whistles, doesn't pay groceries, doesn't pay utilities, but I let him know, hey, this isn't going to be a free ride forever. So I'm going to keep on raising your rent until it becomes uncomfortable for you to stay here. And then you're going to have to go figure it out.
I am super excited to talk to Jerry Tavella, dad, entrepreneur, finance guy for sure.
Again, I'm going to refer back to Paul Malella for a second, because he's been so instrumental in my professional development. But Paul and I always work on experiencing multi-dimensional success and having successes outside of work, but also with relationships and health, family as well. But Paul has been a big proponent of visualizing outcomes long before they occur. So we do that with our kids, right? We have those conversations with our kids all the time as they enter in a new season, or a new year at school, or a new sports season. Like, if everything goes really well, like, what is
what does this look like at the end for you? I do it with clients also. I do it with clients financially. And I talk about if we're getting together 3 years from now, what has to have happened for you to feel really good about the progress you've made personally, professionally, financially, paint a vision and then help them work towards it. I think we use that same exercise and that same conversation all the time in shorter time frames with people I'm coaching at work or with my kids, right? Mm-hmm. We're getting together at the end of the season or at the end of this tournament. What has to have happened for you to feel really good about how it went, right? The relationships that you developed, the friendships that you made, the outcome on the field, right? What does a great outcome look like? And then help them visualize it. And I think when we visualize things, we increase, when we can visualize a positive outcome, we increase the possibility or likelihood that it can occur.
Tell me the last time or the time that strikes your brain the most that you had that conversation with one of your kids. The visualization, especially when it comes to sports, because I think that matches perfectly with where kids are right now. They're not thinking, oh yeah, 3 years from now when I'm applying for college. Like, no, but when it comes to sports, like what is that conversation? Walk me through what that conversation has looked like.
I would think, we've expanded on a conversation recently, and we are expanding on this conversation regularly with my daughter, who has committed herself quite a bit to playing soccer at a pretty competitive level. And she had a coach that did an exercise with her a couple years ago around what her 2 and 3 and 4 year goals were with soccer. And really the pivot point in her soccer journey was around what high school soccer might look like when she was a freshman. And she's in 8th grade right now and completing her club soccer, not completing her soccer career, but near the end. High school will be next year. And her goal has been for a long time to make the JV team as a freshman, right? I think she's got a chance of doing even better than that, but that's been her benchmark goal for a while. And we help her kind of visualize that, right? Who are the girls that are going to be on the team? What does practice look like? Are you traveling? Are you dressing for the varsity games periodically? And I think if we can really talk through that and get her to appreciate and visualize and be able to explain what that would look like, I think it just increases the possibility that she can be successful in that short-term goal.
No, I absolutely love that. Yeah, and that's one of the things I love to talk about here is the balance between being an entrepreneur and being a dad. You can totally pull a lot of stuff because we have 3-year visions for our 3-year pictures for our company. We have 10-year visions for where we want to be. We have all these core focuses and all this stuff. I use EOS, so using EOS language, but all of this stuff that we apply. And then it's okay, why don't we do that with our family? Why don't we do that with our kids? Why don't we help them figure out what a vision is? All this stuff. And it's funny, yesterday, I'm going to pull the sheet over. Yesterday, going around, so I'm in a group called GoBundance, and it's a bunch of entrepreneurs and business owners and folks trying to become, I forgot the tagline, something like a healthy, wealthy tribe type of thing, right? Where you're trying to be better in your marriage, better in your business, better in your family, all this stuff. So one of the things but going around is this little chart here for kids. So it's a growth mindset chart that my son just put right in front of him. He does his homeschool right here in the office with me. And I'm going to put this up here because I think I'm going to need it to remind me once in a while, Dad. And I said, you absolutely do that. I printed it off. So instead of thinking I can't do it, think I'm still learning, I'll trying. And it goes, it's not good enough. And then think is this the best I can do? And if it's not the best you can do, then you're right. It's not good enough. So let's do harder. Let's do the best we can do. If it is the best you can do, then what the heck else can I ask for? It's the best you can do. And trying to teach our kids so I want to do that same thing with the visualization side. So golf is his passion. He loves golf. My 5-year-old is a fan as well. But these 5 still work on trying to figure out if he wants to golf, where his 9-year-old brother is out doing competitions every weekend. He's on multiple different leagues and doing all sorts of stuff. And so I'm looking forward to watching how this goes. But man, oh man, does he get into his head, and it's tough. So I'm going to selfishly ask a question. I know you mentioned that your son golfs and your daughter obviously is rather good at soccer. Have you had to walk through, and I'm going to assume the answer to this is yes, but walk through times where they had a lot of self-doubt in what they were doing and where they were just, hey, I'm terrible at this, or I'm the worst soccer player, the worst golfer, the worst pick your sport. And how did you work through that as a dad?
Look, it certainly comes up. My son, I played golf. My son is just starting to play golf. So yes, we played golf last weekend, but he's not a golfer. His passions are hockey and lacrosse, and he also plays a little bit of soccer. But look, when they get frustrated, the only thing that I think we can speak to, or what can we control, right? We can control our attitude, we can control our effort, right? So really that's what we harp on in our house, right? We're not too worried about the mistakes, the goals against, the lack of goals for, the errant passes, whether it's on a soccer field or whatever it might be. We're focusing on effort. If you gave it the best you possibly could, if you showed up, if you brought your energy and the right attitude, and the right effort, then that's all we can ask for. And I think that's where those conversations exist mostly when our kids are frustrated with any of their activities. Did you give it the best you can? If you give it the best effort you possibly could have, then that's all anybody can ask for. And that's all you can ask for of yourself. Even if it's a tough grade on a quiz, right? Did you study? Did you put in the effort? If not, then yeah, you should be disappointed and discouraged. But if you gave it your best effort, then we'll get them next time.
Yeah. And that part is, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's a crucial part of the conversation of, okay, did you actually study? Because if you didn't, then yeah, be angry. But be good at yourself, right? Let's figure out how we could have done better. And it's the same thing I try to talk about golf. I said, okay, what have you done this week to get better at golf? I don't want to take away your fact that you're swimming in the swimming pool. I want you to go and do that. But did that help you get better at golf? Watching that one extra DIY science episode help you get better at golf? It's great. It's helped out with homeschool. But there's certain things you're doing. What are we doing that is helping and not helping?
And that's one of our biggest struggles as parents. And I don't know if experienced it as well. Like you, as an adult, having been through, my wife played Division I college soccer, and now my daughter's a good soccer player, and I played club hockey in college. And I think we have a good idea of what they can be doing to get better, but you don't want to force it either. Yeah. Like you want them to self-discover, and we can create an environment and give them the tools and give them, if they want it, if they ask for it. We don't want to push either. So it's like it's a tricky balance that we deal with all the time in our house. And I'm sure you do too, around encouraging, pushing, driving, whatever it might be. Like, we just want them to, what's the right language? We want them to just live up, to just get to their potential, right? If you've got the potential, because wasted potential is frustrating to me, right? Mm-hmm. But if you put in the work and get out of it what you should get out of it, then who cares? We don't need anybody going to the NHL or playing for the women's national soccer team. That's not the goal. The goal is just to do the best you possibly can. And trying to figure out the right balance there is always tricky.
Mindfulness and mindset. What kind of conversations do you have with your kids about those two specific things? You said you've been working on it probably the last decade. So what has that turned into for how you're parenting your kiddos?
Look, I think I've definitely taken the approach of trying to never limit their possibilities, right? Like, I think, and limit their mindset at all, in the sense that I can think of a particular story where my son wanted to go shoot hockey pucks in the basement one morning before school, and he had not completed his homework, which he had to complete before he got on the bus because of my kid's current education system, which we revisit. So my wife had some rules around what he could do. And in that moment, she said to him, "You're not going to be in the NHL." And then he said, I can remember a conversation later that night where my son said, and this is the way he framed it, which I thought was interesting. Is there anybody playing in the NHL now whose mom told them that they couldn't or wouldn't? Ooh, and I was like, just the way he framed that, like he was thinking more forward, not like he could have said, do you think I could play in the NHL? But he said, is there anybody playing in the NHL now whose mom told them that they weren't going to play in the NHL? And I'm like, I didn't even know how to react to that. But my wife and I had a pretty moving conversation about where it's, look, he's 10 years old. He's not that skilled. He's not the best 10-year-old on his team. He's not the best 10-year-old in the league. He's not destined for the NHL. But what harm is there in letting a kid dream and believe? And things still need to happen in order. We're not going to sacrifice education for, but I think there's different ways to frame it and to keep them working hard and to keep their dreams alive and to promote just a sense of unlimited possibilities. That's the approach that I think I take in that respect, because it's interesting the way kids think.
For sure. We have Dr. Travis Parry joining us to chat about running businesses, balance between family and business.
My kids got me the best dad ever. And I think that wasn't because I am. I think that's to remind me every time I jump on one of these is I need to be a best dad ever to them. Yeah. And I think that's the thing is we're sent to earth in these families. I call them pods. Like God could have chosen any way, but he put us in families. He's like, nope, you're going to have a mom and you're going to have a dad. And you're going to come to this family. This is your responsibility. This is our time to shine. So many people talk about serving others and helping. And I think that's really good. It's very Christian. There's values there. But if they don't serve in their own home first, if they don't serve their own spouse first, then where are their priorities? So as I unpacked a lot of, after dad died, I wanted to write a book for years. It took me 10 years to finally unpack some of these principles and put them into what a lot of people are calling a time management book. But really, this is a book on priorities. And I call it the make time method because we all have a choice with our time. We all do. And how do we utilize that? We can either let somebody else dictate that, or a lot of our clients, or the world, or whatever, our anxiety, or we can make time for things that matter the most. And I start with an introductory chapter about my dad, his legacy and his input in my life that has set me on a trajectory to try and become balanced. Now, I totally blew this up, Adam, and my heart was in the right place, but I didn't have the skills. I enjoyed it. I had a great childhood. But man, the Franklin planner, the days of looking up how to drive someplace in the back of a map, spiral bound on the seat, like I was the navigator for my dad half the time when we were driving around doing jobs. Now everything's digital. Everything is technology right at your fingertips. And we have to change the way that we manage our time. We have to change the way that we make time for our priorities. And that's what I want to reflect in this Achieving Balance. Stephen Covey's matrix that he stole from Eisenhower no longer, I believe, is very helpful. And I've fell in to this workaholic trap where I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be like my grandpa. I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to go places and do things. And it was all about me. It was all about money. And it was all about how can I be successful before my dad and before my grandpa. But like I said, my heart was in the right place because I wanted to provide for my family. It wasn't just for me to hoard. It was so that I could provide for my family. I graduated, my wife and I graduated. We had 2 kids. Like we were having kids in college. Like people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, this is just what God has asked us to do. And we're going with it. And as I started to fall into this trap, I realized I wanted to have what I thought was a balanced life, which was doing everything for everyone. And I could see that in my own dad, where his priorities were there, but I think that he got caught in this where I have to be everything to everyone. I've got to be Superman. And you and I both know we can't make the world stop. We can't make it spin back around. We don't even want to wear capes. Those are dangerous anyways, we saw in Pixar movies. But what it really comes down to is that we can't multitask. But computers, the invention of a computer has made us believe that we can because of the click of a button or the mouse or wherever, the flick of the switch. We're running on, it's just doing it so fast. So we try to do it and we end up switching from one task to another. And we think we're multitasking, but we're really doing things slower, less quality. And at the end of the day, we feel burnt out because what have we actually accomplished? What are the things we've actually done? And technology is a big part of that. So when I wrote Achieving Balance, it wasn't because I had this all figured out. I had to go get trained. I had to go get some coaching. I even studied a whole master's degree in psychology to figure out the motivation behind why we want to achieve in life. And that really put me into a whole different spin. What I would have been able to discover is this idea that if we can make time for our most important things in life and career, never met a married man with children who career is a number one priority in their life. Never.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen because they care about their wife and they care about their kids. It's more important than them. It still is very important to them. It's going to be a top priority. And we spend a lot of time on it. But therein lies the problem. Most Americans, 60 to 70 hours a week. Entrepreneurs, 72 hours on average per week. They work in or on their business. 72 hours. So what do we do Parkinson's law says we've given ourselves this much time, so we're going to take it. That's Parkinson's. But if we can say, hey, let's compress it, we'll get the same amount, if not more, done in less time. Sometimes even 3 to 5 times more, because now we're focused. And now we have figured out how to make time for the things that are most important at work. We take the fat and we delete it. True balance is when we are in line with our core values and we feel a balance in our mental, emotional, spiritual state. Well, what we actually will do as a family is we will have a family council every Sunday night. And we have a family goal for the month. That family goal was picked proactively by the family as a group from one of the values in our mission statement. Every year we focus on a value. Maybe it's adventure, maybe it's spirituality, humility, whatever that is. And so then every month we say, okay, here's our value. What should we try and do together as a family to focus on this value? Half the battle is just remembering what it was that we chose. So we've got a chalkboard and we write it up there and we can see it and we're reminded. And every week we talk about it, we celebrate together. So that's the family portion. And that keeps us as a family, regardless of how old you are. You can be 2 and be like, me go potty. That's her thing right now. Like she's learning to go potty. Great. So our 2-year-old is learning that. And that's part of her keeping her stewardship in the home. And stewardship is the word that we're focusing on this year. How can we better be stewards of our home, our things, each other, that sort of thing. And so every single person, regardless of position, knows that this is the goal and they can work on it. 2, my wife and I, because we develop together and we have our own goals and we have our couple goals, then we sit down with every one of our children once a month alone. We have 8 children. If we can do this, you can do this. My dad actually did this for me. I talked to you about me coming to work with him in his work truck. So here I am in my plumbing gear and we're but there were times on Sundays where he said, you know what, let's just have a heart to heart, come in my office and let's talk about your goals. So goal focused because of my dad. He did that for me. Since my oldest was like old enough to sit on her own, I had these conversations with her.
Nice.
And we started really young. Now, if you're thinking, I can't, my kids are too old, baloney. Start today. Talk to them. Talk to them about what they want. Talk to them about their goals. They will have a different relationship with you. This will change it. And if you're struggling with your relationship with your kid, talk to them about what they want to achieve. What do they want to become? Who they want to be in this world. There's nothing more important to them than that right now. They may not know what their goals are, but you could say, dude, what are you interested in? And be involved in that. We have a rotation, but with the oldest, we take more time. Why? They're more dynamic creatures. The 16-year-old has a driver's license and dates and has a job and has a life that is pulling him outside of our family every day. So that time is precious. And so we probably spend a good hour or so with him. But as we go down the line, it's quicker and shorter. Yeah. But every one of them have goals in all areas of life. Some of those goals are very simple, right? Learn my ABCs and learn to be a potty trained this year. Some of them are very complex. Our goal as parents, in my humble opinion, Adam, it is not to train identical human beings and live through them. And I know that's far side, but my humble opinion is our goal as parents is to coach our children to help them become their best selves. And it's our job now to train them. You know, I've got a friend of mine who wrote a book, 18 Summers, and I met him. He's a great guy. I believe in the sentiment that we do have 18 years with our kids at home. As we homeschool, I'm sorry, I'm going to this is a homeschool flex. Like, we have a little bit extra, we have more time than 18 Summers, right? So you and I, we share that in common. And I'm not saying that if you're not a homeschool dad, you're out of the club. Make time for your kids. That's the key. The key is making the time. Because I can be a homeschool dad and pretend I spend time with my kids and really be on my phone.
That's the truth.
You have to make the time. But My kids, you would think, how do your kids take to that? Do they like that? They line up at the door. Is it my turn? Is it my turn yet? Are you kidding me? Even my 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they fight over whose turn it is to spend alone with their mom and their dad to talk about who? Themselves. Not because they're selfish and egotistical, because they need coaching. You think about all the coaching we spent on ourselves as adults, right? For career development, for this and the other. What are we spending on our kids to invest in their development? We'll spend it on sports. We'll spend it on educational camps. Yeah. But why not make the investment of time to be there for your kids and help them achieve their goals? You don't have to be the mentor. You don't have to be the guy that teaches them how to woodwork. You don't have to know mechanics to help them find a mentor to work on cars together. Before this podcast, I drove my 13-year-old son down the road because there's a highway. We have to get on the highway and go around to a lady in our neighborhood who has a garden. My kid's a green thumb and he loves gardening. And she's paying him to weed and plant and do all these things. And she's a mentor to him. So what I'm trying to say is you can be the coach, but you don't have to orchestrate every part of their life. You don't have to be at everything. And you don't, meaning like you can allow other people to mentor them as they get older. So developmentally appropriate, start simple, start young, be with them, help coach them. At least once a month, we're having these conversations formally with our kids. And then throughout the month, we follow up with them. How are you doing on this? What about that? And at family councils every Sunday night, we celebrate our individual wins too. Hey, is there something that you did this week that was towards your goals? We're all family together, working together towards family development, called family development. And I said, hey, wait, hold on. What about this theory? You make me learn all these other theories. And I kid you not, Adam, the professors there, even though they knew that this is a legit real theory, they say, we don't use that anymore. So we're not going to teach you that. And I just laughed. Well, but it's, anyway, it was a losing battle. They're like, you're not going to publish any papers basically and turn this in based on this theory. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. You're right. But it's still truth. The truth is truth. They're your team. And you and your spouse, you're the team leaders. So you got to start there. If the two of you are not on the same path, you will not be able to direct the family. You'll not be able to help them. You have to be united. And if your kids see you united, then they're going to carry on that tradition. If they don't see you united, they're going to carry on that tradition potentially until something happens in their life and they learn from it. And kids can be resilient. My strongest voice of warning is to get on that path. Start today. Whatever you need to do to get on that same page with your spouse and help your kids to develop to their fullest potential.
One of your favorite books that you mentioned was The Family Board Meeting. And when you only have 18 summers and you only have these things that you need to do with your family, like putting that as a priority well over making $1 bajillion or whatever it is, I've called multiple people out on their bucket list stuff, like you're saying about, where's your family on any of this? Like your family has nothing to do with your bucket list stuff, really? Like none of the biggest things you have in your life you want to do with your wife and kids? And then all of a sudden it's, oh crap, yeah, I totally do. And I made that mistake massively when I built my entire future, my wife's future, my kids' future, my future. I wrote it all out on a piece of paper and never talked to my wife and kids about it at all. I just said, no, this is our future. And it was like, you selfish idiot. No, like they have a huge part in this. So absolutely love that you're already engaged in doing that and crushing that. But tell me about the family board meeting. I know that was an important book for you, but tell me about what you're implementing from it, what you took away from that, and how your family has been.
I know a lot of guys have read it. I was late to the game, but I was like, okay, give me the book. I'll read that thing. And I got a big stack of books. It's funny thing is, I wasn't even a reader, and in the last year, I've become a voracious reader. Nice. And family board meeting was one that was, I think, maybe the second or third book I read, and I was like, hey, this is about just taking advantage of the time. And so that just goes back a little bit to taking advantage of the time we have. We can't travel a ton with the kids. but it's just making the best memories with what you can do. And so like I mentioned, the trip to the beach this weekend, we're there to play field hockey, but we're going to make the most of every minute while we're there and be on the beach and go for walks and go and have dinner on the water. And then with my son, that's why I was really passionate about always making sure we went on a ski trip each year, even though it was just for 2-3 days, like a weekend. We would squeak up to Killington and go skiing. But that book just gives you like a lens to be looking through. I'm not able to do something every month with my kids, but when you get that opportunity with a lens of let's make this really special, how do we do it? Taking advantage of that little bit of time that you do have, because I do have a daughter in college, and she's not at home anymore. You know, we went out to dinner last night for my daughter's birthday, my other daughter Brinkley, and it's like, oh man, we got to see her. And then my other daughter next year is going to go to college, so it's going to be just Easton and my wife and I at home. It's going to be, quieter, and you missed, and the kids are gone, and so you don't know what's going to happen after college, if they're going to move back in or if they're not. And my kids are great. Everybody gets along. I'm super lucky in that regard. With everybody's very harmonious in our house. My daughters are best friends. They laugh and joke. They have an incredible relationship, which I'm so happy about. Their joking and friendship is amazing, and I just feel so blessed by that, because I know many families where the kids claw tooth and nail and absolutely hate each other, and what that does to a family. We all get along, all the kids get along, and it is amazing. And so we just want to try to take advantage of all the time we had together, because there are 2 girls, one in college, another one in college. And so it's let's make the most of these, really hone in on trying to make the most of the time together.
For sure. Yeah, and it's one of those, you don't realize how quick it went away until it's gone, right? Because everybody talks about how, man, they grew up so fast. And we hear that from everybody, but yet for some reason, some of us, it takes a little longer than others to get it through our thick skull that, no, it really does disappear pretty quickly. So take advantage of every moment you have.
It goes, yep. Yes, it does.
It's tough. That's one of the reasons when I went to Vermont, I grabbed the car and I said, I'm going to take the boys. Like, me and the boys are going to do a road trip. So we did a road trip from Florida all the way to Vermont. We stopped at a couple different spots. I got to see some friends. I was like, I'm going to spend some time with the boys because I've got the extra days. I do homeschool, so they've got the extra time. What the heck? They could do some schoolwork in the deck, and we could stop and do a snowball fight in the middle of North Carolina because we can. So that's what we did. Take advantage of the adventure and find the opportunities that you can. I'm excited to talk to Corey Robinson, a business owner, father of 4. Absolutely looking forward to enjoying some conversation. I would imagine that's a big change from not seeing him for 15 years to being business partners with him now. But obviously a lot's happened in between then and now. What kind of things did you take into parenthood that, you obviously felt that abandonment from your dad? That's obviously something that was there. What kind of feelings did that bring into parenthood for you? How did that change the way that you wanted to parent your children?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? I think what it has brought to me the most, I am really passionate about being present, right? Showing up is the way that I show my kids that I love them. I'm not always the greatest father in the world, and I can be a lot better in many ways, but even with everything I have going on in the world, and it's as busy as it's ever been, I always want to be there. I want them to know. I want them to look in the stands and see me. I want them to know that I'm present and engaged in their upbringing. And that's one of the things that I think that I've done a really good job of through everything, through all the different jobs, college and work, entrepreneurship and work, and to where I'm at today. The one thing that I feel really good about is I always show up. And that's been like one of my driving forces, I think, to my life. I became an entrepreneur because I wanted freedom. I didn't want work to get in the way anymore. It's in the way now drastically, but it's all on my own terms today. And so that's one of the big, I think, takeaways for me. And I think the other part is, especially for the boys, I know what I needed at that age, those important milestones where you need a man in your life to help guide you in the right direction. And I think for me, that's another thing that I lack that. And so I looked to others as role models, whether it be my friends' dads that were good dads, or even other people that I idolized. What were their attributes and what did they bring to the table? And so those are different ways that I thought about who I wanted to be and how I wanted to support my kids. That's really how I framed up my father. But like, I didn't have an example, a direct example, but what I did was like take a collection of those that I admired or looked up to and try to live up to those.
Was that something you were doing like consciously, or do you think you just pieced that together and started playing with it as you were fathering? Was that something you thought about beforehand is really what I'm trying to pin down?
Yeah, I think I did. I think that I intentionally sought that out. I looked for characteristics in people that I would want to be like. I didn't want to be a kid that was in trouble or be a bad kid. I don't want to say that it was a matter of my circumstances, but the environment matters a lot, especially at that age. Yeah. And so that was never the life that I wanted. So I did intentionally look to those people that I admired, that I thought had good qualities and good characteristics to be like. And I think I did that when I was young. And those are still things that I do today.
What does getting better every day look like right now for you as a dad, like with your son?
So I'm fortunate in the thing I'm working on right now to have the flexibility of time. So I pick up my son after school. I'm usually doing the pickup, which I love being part of that process. I get to take him to his practices and go to his games. I've been able to attend his first things that he's doing at school on stage. So I was there, like physically present, but also mentally present to appreciate that part of his life. And I think that's what has been really important right now for me in this part of my journey.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I was almost always the one who picked the kiddos up from school. Like my wife would drop them off early in the morning, and then or it would either be one way or the other. Is one of us would drop them off, and the other one would pick them up. And those were such joyous moments for me. Like the drive home when we lived in Virginia, our drive home was like 45 minutes. So I'd pick the kids up from school, and then I'd have a 45-minute drive home. And like the conversations we get to have with at that time it was kindergarten through second grade when we were up there, my oldest. And like just like 45 minutes in the car, just the two of you. Rourke was there too, but he was so little that he wasn't necessarily a part of the conversation for a lot of it. But man, it's just so much fun to be able to do that and go and see those things. And that's when I was still in the military. And now that I'm out, it's golly, I was picking up, I was dropping off, I was at every event. Like everything was just kids. And what a joyous time, but exhausting.
It is.
How have you found that transition from working a bunch in tech and getting burnt out to now balancing that absolute pleasure of being able to be there for all of those things, but yet still now working from home, managing business, trying to make sure things are getting done at the same time as enjoying those moments of being 1% better every day for your kid?
It's for me, it comes down to just being very intentional with the things that you're doing. I know I've been guilty in the past at working for these companies of saying, there's one more thing I got to get to. And then that one more thing gets to 10 more things I got to get to. And it's just this endless cycle of these one more things, that I have to get to in life. And before you know it, the time in the day during the week is gone, and you've missed out on being present and focused in the moment with your wife and your son. So doing this, I can block off time and be intentional about the time I'm going to spend heads down on deep work for what we're doing, and then understand the process and time commitments that it takes each week to get the pre-production and post-production elements of what we're doing out there. And as I understand that process, I can start to manage that in an efficient and effective way so that it's not cutting into my time with my family. And it seems to be working right now. Again, I don't know, a month, a year from now, if I'll be doing the same thing or if this will be something that is complementary to what I'm doing. But having this time has been a good sort of reflection exercise for me to refocus on what the most important things are in life. And I'm very grateful for all the things that I've had in my life, from a great family to good jobs and a great marriage, and finding the right partner in life to go through that with, to put us in a position where we can think about these things and manage our life the way that we generally want to as dads, as husbands, as adults. One of the biggest regrets a lot of people have later in life is not what they thought was the definition of success is not really the definition of success. And the most important thing is that they missed out on is time with their families and friends and colleagues. And just as a reminder to myself, as much as anybody, we're all going to be old one day, and take advantage of the time you have with the people you love now, because you can't get it back.
Very true. And especially as fathers, as parents, there's that book, 18 Summers. You only have 18 summers. Was it, who wrote that? James Cleary? I don't remember. But you only have 18 summers with your kids, and you ain't getting them back. Like, once those kids are out of your house, you don't get those summers with them back, where you get to control what goes on. So take advantage while you can. Enjoy those moments, every one of them, including the stressful ones. It's an absolute blessing.